Welcome to Red's Story. Please subscribe and leave a comment if you enjoy the plot. Story 1. She came over to me in a coffee shop while she was on vacation in my country to ask how to tip. We had a 2-hour conversation and then an amazing 5-hour lunch 2 days later. She complained about her hostel, so I offered her my spare bedroom and she accepted. Nothing happened, although it seems crystal clear in retrospect that we were falling for each other. I didn't want to be pushy and make her feel uncomfortable under my roof, so making any moves on her wasn't something I seriously considered. 2 nights later, I had to be gone for most of the night on a work assignment, and I asked if she would please watch and walk my dog in my absence. I came home at 5 a.m. and was greeted by my suddenly very soft, very fluffy dog. She had somehow understood, "Will you please wash my dog?" and apparently didn't find that a strange request at all. The next evening, after we'd been talking over a bottle of wine for hours, it seems that she had enough of my apparent indecisiveness, took the wine glass out of my hand, put it down, and leaned in for a kiss. That was 26 years ago. We've been married 23 years. Story 2. On the Greyhound. During my time in the Army, I was stationed at Fort Eustis, Virginia. On my way home, which was Denver, Colorado at the time for Christmas, I saw her sitting across from and slightly behind me. Honestly, I didn't pay much attention to her at first, but my buddy seated next to her did. After getting shot down repeatedly for a day and a half, he finally got off the bus. Shortly thereafter, she came over and sat next to me, and we started talking. After that, we got split up, put on different buses, and I kicked myself for not getting her number. Then when the bus stopped in Street Lewis, there she was, standing right there in the entrance, almost like she was waiting for me. If my bus had arrived 15 minutes later, I'd have never seen her again. Then I found out that the bus to Denver was delayed due to snow and wasn't going anywhere for at least 2 days. She hurried over to the ticket counter and had my ticket changed to Des Moines, Iowa, where she was going, so I wouldn't be trapped in Street Lewis for 2 days. We spent the next 4 days getting to know each other, and then I continued home. We had a long-distance relationship for about 6 months until I came home permanently, by which time she had moved to Denver and rented an apartment. We got married 3 years later and have been together 10 years total. Story 3. After 4 years of no dating following a crushing breakup, a mutual friend pointed out that she was into me. I was oblivious to this. I didn't know her very well, but I was ready to try again. I wasn't even sure if I was very attracted to her, but I figured it couldn't hurt to go on a date with a nice girl. And we hit it off. She's pretty shy, which is why she said that she'd never have the courage to try and talk to me. And in the course of the first date, I'm slowly realizing, wow, she's amazing. Many years later, now we have 2 kids, and there's just a lot of love in our lives. Story 4. At a garage sale. Well, technically, my mom's garage sale. My father was a hoarder, but not old newspapers or glass bottles or garbage. He hoarded consumer goods, tools, CDs, home improvement stuff, camping gear, hunting, and fishing stuff. The man had piles and piles of it stuffed into his home, most of it pretty high quality, all bought on clearance. The old man was a sucker for a deal, even if he didn't have a use for it. So after he passed away, it fell to us to figure out what to do with a stock of overstocked goods large enough to open a store. So we sold it at rock-bottom prices in the front yard, as is tradition. It was a miserably hot summer's day. My mom requested that I come over and help because the house was on a well-trafficked street, and the sheer volume of stuff meant that there would be tons of people. And she was right. There had been a zillion people the day before, and when we sold a lot of stuff, there was much more yet to go. And today, I put an ad up on Craigslist, so it was even busier. It was a long day of haggling with strangers, but at the end of the day, we sold 90% of the load, and we were just getting ready to close up and celebrate our success with pizza. Then this car pulls up, and out hops this gorgeous girl. She starts poking around in the CDs first and finds a couple that she loves and then waves me over and starts asking about some that she's unfamiliar with. Story 4 continued. She thought that since she found a few things she liked, the stuff she hadn't heard might be in the same vein, not knowing that it was purchased indiscriminately from bargain bins all over town. I answered as best as I could and hadn't heard most of them, but I was able to steer her to a couple that she might enjoy. We kept chatting and I sort of showed her around in between helping other people who kept showing up. There was definitely an instant attraction and some really great conversation. She had to get going, so I made her a sweetheart deal on the stuff and helped her to her car. She got in, drove away, and then I realized I hadn't gotten her number. My brother and my neighbor had a field day at my stupidity, but she told me where she worked at a restaurant down the road, and she told me the days she was usually scheduled. So I did something very unusual for me and pursued it. Friday afternoons, I drove over from my office and asked to sit in her section. The food was terrible, but she'd stop and chat as long as it wasn't too busy, and I caught her mirroring a few times. So on my third visit, I told her I'd love to see more of her and asked for her number. 10 years, a marriage, and a child later, and we're still head over heels for each other. So I guess I owe my dad for the posthumous hookup. Story 5. He was in the corner drinking a bottle of water. I noticed him immediately, and I noticed him noticing me for the better part of an hour. I finally just walked up to him after I figured he was too shy to approach me. We chatted for about 2 hours and then left, and later in school, we exchanged our AOL screen names, and after weeks of random chat sessions, he finally worked up the courage to ask if I wanted to see a movie, Harry Potter. During the date, he didn't say anything, but I noticed him very fidgety, so I decided to hold his hand. After the movie, we were sitting in his car in silence, and he was fidgety again, so I grabbed his face and kissed his cheek. He turned completely red but was grinning ear to ear. In person, he had trouble stringing sentences together, but online, we would chat for hours, and he had to express his love via email and cuddling without saying a word. We first met over 14 years ago, bought a house together, and got married in October, going to Disney and Universal for our honeymoon, celebrating Halloween. It's pretty much amazing, and as we get older, he's gotten much more vocal, but I still do most of the talking and socializing. We do a squeeze-squeeze when holding hands to mean love you, if we don't want to talk. Story 6. Always thought she was really pretty and had noticed her when she first moved into the dorms. She was a year under me. She had a boyfriend all through her freshman year, but I'm not one to try and mess with that. After that year, my sophomore year, I moved out and went to live in an apartment with some friends. My best friend and I were pretty introverted, and we were worried that we wouldn't meet anyone since we moved out to separate apartments. One of the main perks of dorm living was being around hundreds of people your age within 100 feet at all times. So we made a pact to visit our old dorm at least once a week to try and meet new people and stay in contact with the underclassmen that we had met thus far. She still lived in a dorm but had moved across the street to a different dorm that was all girls. One time in early August at the beginning of the school year, we went to visit our old dorm around 7 p.m. We found some friends from last year there, including her. Now, I didn't know her up until that point, just that she was extremely pretty in her name. Story 6 continued. Anyways, we decided to go to another girl's apartment to play board games. As a genius ploy, my friend and I had purchased a board game to give us something to do to meet people. We're really cool, in case you couldn't tell. So we went to this house and met some people we had never met. Our board game required pairs of people, so we paired up, and I got paired with the girl who lived in the apartment. My friend got paired up with the pretty girl. It was fine, though, because while I thought she was pretty, I didn't know if she was single. The night went on, and it was really fun. We played for about 4 hours and got some good conversation in with these people that we barely knew or didn't know at all. Afterwards, when my friend and I got home, I made sure to add everyone that I had met on Facebook because for reasons that felt important, I don't know. Next week, we went out again during the day and I saw her there again. Originally, there had probably been 6 of us in the dorm lobby, but one by one, everyone left until it was just her and me. We got to talking and she seemed really cool. I liked her. But she said that she had to go study or something after a while, and I assumed that I had freaked her out or whatever. The next week she was there again, and we talked for a bit in a group of people before the group collectively decided to go play volleyball at the local rec center across the street. She agreed to come, and before we left, my friend told me she's flirting with you. I didn't believe him and thought that he was just pulling my leg. Story 6 continued. So we went to play volleyball and she showed up and we played for at least 3 hours. She was there the whole time and seemed genuinely terrified to play. It was bizarre. It's like she didn't want to be there but stuck out the whole time despite some people leaving halfway through and it being perfectly reasonable for her to leave then too. Afterwards, some people left to go eat while others went back to the dorm. I went back to the dorm and she came with. We talked for a bit, and by a bit, I mean hours, in a group. I got really hungry, but I was afraid if I left to go eat that she wouldn't come with me and that we'd never be able to talk like this again. So my friend went and got me McDonald's, delivered it to me, and then promptly left to talk to other people in a different part of the dorm. I mustered up the courage, and it took me a little while to ask for her number. She gave it to me, and I saw her the next weekend. She kissed me, and I was over the moon. The next week, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and I plan to ask her to be my wife. Story 7. Went on a night out in Chester. I was originally not going to because I'm not a fan of drinking, but my best friend managed to convince me to go out. Now there were about 6 of us, 2 couples, me and another girl. I'm really shy and find it difficult to talk to girls, so for me, in the first few hours, I didn't say a word to her. Then we moved to the next bar over. After about an hour in this bar, my best friend's girlfriend ran up the stairs and whispered something into his ear. He comes up to me, and his exact words were, "Listen, Mike, all you have to do is talk to her. I'm not asking you to do rocket science, just talk to her." So I did, and it started off small, like, "How are you? And where do you work? It ended up with me losing my nerves that night, and we're still together after 2 months. Story 8. I was living in a duplex with some friends, and one day I decided to take one of my roommate's dogs for a walk, which I never usually did. Shortly after leaving the house, I was stopped by a girl who asked, "Don't I know you from somewhere?" I had never seen her before, but it was enough to start the small talk. She helped me walk the dog around the block, and we were basically inseparable from that point on. What my introverted self failed to notice at the time was that she had been trying to get me to notice her for weeks, walking her own dog past my house, riding her bike next to my car, and waiting for me to get home from work when I would unknowingly street park in front of her house where she would be doing yard work. She succeeded by catching me walking the dog, which, remember, I never ever did. It was fate, I guess. 6 months after meeting her, I moved out of the duplex and 5 houses down the street, and we've been married 16 years now. Story 9. I met my fiancée on the first day of college completely by accident. I programmed my schedule into my phone and hadn't accounted for daylight savings time. Therefore, I showed up to my first class an hour early, unknown to me. I had decided that I was going to make a real effort to put myself out there and be social, so I sat near the front of the lecture hall. I'd shown up with plenty of time before class, which was an hour earlier than my real class, and me and these 4 other people started talking about where we were from and stuff like that. They were all freshmen too, and I was really stoked because it was before the first class even, and I found a group of friends to hang out with. One of these people was a gorgeous girl in a row ahead of me, and I fell in love with her the first time she turned around and asked me my name. Right before class, we decided to all get lunch at one of the dining halls later at a specified time. About 15 minutes into the class, it became really obvious that I wasn't in the right class. Story 9 continued. I went to my schedule online and realized that my entire schedule on my phone was an hour early, so I was too embarrassed to stand there and leave at this point, so I just stayed. I almost didn't go to lunch when and where we agreed upon because I thought it would be embarrassing, but I thought there was a chance that the gorgeous girl would be there. As luck would have it, I ran into her in the lobby of the dining hall and we ate lunch and talked for 3 hours. We never saw any of those 3 people from the class, and I don't think I've spoken to them since. But then I added her on Facebook rather than ask for her number because I'm a coward, and we got lunch together several more times during the first 2 weeks of class. Then she asked me if I'd go with her to this party that her roommate wanted to go to. We both hated it, but I kissed her while walking her back to her dorm. We've been together ever since. Story 10. The introverted me in college was mostly hanging out in my room on the first floor. She would come by with her friends to hang out with the other guys living in the building. Of course, she would just say hi, passing by, but then she'd stop in for a few minutes. Slowly, she'd hang out more often and longer. People asked if we were dating, and we both denied it at first, but then realized, oh wait, maybe we are. 17 years later, and we are married with a child. So it turns out I didn't even have to leave my room to get a girl.